Good morning, Allison. How are you?
Good morning, Bill. I am great. I'm excited for our conversation today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm also excited to reconnect with David. He and I have known each other for some time, and I thought for our time together today, one, I think you'd benefit getting to know him as well. But I thought with what's happening post pandemic,
Hmm.
we both can learn a whole lot more about David's business, what's going on there, and that kind of stuff. So before
Yeah.
we bring David into the conversation, for those of you who are watching this episode for the first time, my name is Bill. My co host is Allison, as you see here. And in the event you need to get in touch with either one of us because you're interested to guest in one of our upcoming episodes, feel free to scan this QR code, engage us in a quick conversation so that we can learn more about you. So, all of that being said, let's bring David into the studio.
All right.
Hello, David.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So David just came back from a trip out west, California, and the first thing he told me was, I saw all of this green stuff.
California had been in a drought for years. I think you've all heard about it with the forest fires and so forth. And Southern California is typically a desert. Well, I'll tell you, the desert is in bloom. It is very, very green. And I
Yeah,
will tell you that even the natives have not seen it like that in many of their lifetimes. It was remarkable, beautiful.
I wonder,
that's
is that attributed, do you think, to some of the recent flooding and the amount of rain that's been getting dumped on them? Or do you think this is just
Absolutely. I
kind of
mean,
like
they
nature playing its course?
Absolutely. I mean, they have had record amounts of rain. I think that they had 40 or 50 inches of rain since the beginning of the year, which is stunning. I mean, Southern California is desert, and they had been rationing water. And now everything is remarkably, remarkably green. The hills that are typically brown, desert-like, are beautiful verdant green, like the green that is in your background. Just stunning.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have a hard time getting around?
Oh, no, 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 no. GPS makes that completely plausible now. So traffic in California is always difficult, but GPS has changed our lives, like so many other things in technology, right?
Mhm.
So very true. So very true. So David, let me lead us off with asking you to share a 30,000 foot level of what type of law do you practice? And my part B to that question is, did you know that upon finishing law school, did you know that's exactly what you wanted to do?
Well, I'll answer the second question first. I don't think that anyone, except perhaps parents and children of bankruptcy lawyers, think that they're going to be bankruptcy lawyers. No, when I went to law school, I thought I was going to be doing real estate and commercial work. But the law firm that I went to focused on bankruptcy, and I realized that my path to success would require me learn something and actually, be proficient at bankruptcy. So I have been representing people and businesses in bankruptcy cases of all sorts for close to 50 years now, which is kind of stunning. And I've represented debtors and creditors and businesses and people. But for the past 25 years, I've had my own firm, and I represent people and businesses that are in financial difficulty. I serve as a bankruptcy trustee as well in Chicago, and I've done that for about 30 years or so. So I have a very wide ranging and diverse practice.
I hear you. Yeah. David, what is the one trigger recently that surprises you that has led to an increase in bankruptcy filings and therefore a growth in your business?
Well, bankruptcy filings had been really at a record low for perhaps the past 4 or 5 years. Many bankruptcy lawyers struggled even to remain in business. We noticed an uptick in bankruptcy cases in February and then again in March. And if you look at my post on LinkedIn, you'll see why. But I think there are three factors. First, $16 trillion of consumer debt. That's very, very difficult. and people are incurring debt because with inflation, they can't keep up with the cost of goods and services, even though they are fully employed. So that's one factor. Then once they incur the consumer debt, the increased interest rates that they have got to bear requires them to pay larger minimum monthly payments, and that is stressing people considerably. If anyone has a shock based upon perhaps a loss of job or perhaps a difficult time with an employment situation or a health situation or maybe a death in the family or divorce, they don't have the resilience to be able to cope with that. And we're seeing an increase in automobile repossessions too, because people are basically stretching themselves to buy vehicles, and the cost of the interest for these vehicles is difficult. So people are stressed, and we've noticed an increase in cases both for individual cases and in business-related cases for the past 2 months. I do expect that to continue.
Oh, wow. Do you see more personal bankruptcy filings from employees, workers of a business, or is there more coming from like self-employed business owners?
I'm seeing both. Yesterday, someone came to see me who had a failed gymnasium business. In fact, I've had 2 clients come to see me in recent months from failed gymnasium business. So you can see why that could happen, because when people are stretched, they give up discretionary expenditures. So a gymnasium is a discretionary expenditure. So if people are not going to the gym, the gymnasium operators can find themselves in trouble. And then they are stuck with their SBA loans, and the SBA loans may put their house and their wealth and their fortune at risk. So that's one type of thing. And then we see employees of both high income and low income that have been having difficulties in basically keeping all of their obligations. So I would say that we're seeing episodes of stress really across the board.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. The next question I want to ask you, because I see this in my business, is how has technology transformed your business, or generally the business of bankruptcy?
Well, everything that we do now is Zoom. We don't go to court at all any longer. Since the pandemic, the only time that you might go to court would be on if there's a hearing or a trial where the judge wants to actually look you in the eye to see whether you're telling the truth or not. And that's a rare occasion. That's one thing. In addition to that, a lot of our interaction with clients is by Zoom rather than by telephone. Or FaceTime even rather than telephone. People do want to see you face to face. And so the telephone has changed. It is now the instrumentality by which we can communicate visually as well as otherwise. And we're doing a lot of texting, which I have to say did not happen earlier in my career as well. So a lot of text messaging is happening. In terms of data collection, though, we now have platforms which allow us to gather data just like you might be doing a mortgage application, or just like you might be doing DocuSign in a residential real estate transaction. So we gather data electronically, and that really cuts out the need for a paralegal to do that. The paralegals are then free to do more substantive work, and we have then direct person-to-person contact with the client. So technology is helping us in many ways, and we're going to see more of it as AI comes into play. I'm positive.
And is the benefit back to the person filing bankruptcy, is the benefit that of it's a faster, more efficient process? Can you speak to that?
It is faster. It can be cheaper. It certainly results in a more direct connection between the lawyer and the client. I find that by using the data gathering interface rather than using the paralegal, I'm in touch with the client rather than the paralegal, and the client is happier knowing that they're directly in touch with me. So I can utilize my time more efficiently, and the client feels connected with me, just like you and I are connected today. Allison, you're feeling it for the first time. We've never even known each other, and I feel like we can communicate completely transparently this way, can't we?
Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing. I mean, I don't want to call it a silver lining, because there were plenty of organizations, plenty of companies and individuals using Zoom regularly before the pandemic, but it really has been eye-opening how much we can accomplish using StreamYard, Zoom, and these like virtual engagement tools that I think a lot of us probably pushed back on initially and wondered if they would really bring the same value that a face-to-face interaction brings. But I have to say, I've become a real fan. I still love meeting people face to face and shaking hands and sitting across the table from someone, but the freedom to be able to serve your clients anytime from anywhere is pretty remarkable.
I have to say, after the pandemic, I found that I had a bit of Zoom fatigue. Not that the Zoom was ineffective, but you needed to get out and about and to see people and to have the kind of off the wall or ping pong sort of effect that you might have when some sparks fly when you meet a person individually. And Bill will tell you, I got involved in various different kind of networking groups, more or less to see people. Now, the other thing which is important is that, you'll notice that I'm a different age cohort than you guys are, and you guys are, very comfortable in this milieu. A lot of my peers are not. So I got myself out of that comfort zone to get into your space because there's more of you than there are of me these days. And I really think it's important for us to kind of get to know each other and understand how we work together so we can, learn from our respective experiences. It's very, very important.
That's
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I have a quick follow-up question regarding technology and how it's impacting your business, because for Bill and I in our industry, things have been changing at a lightning fast pace for a while. And where technology can bring us value is allowing us to meet clients where they are before they even are maybe aware that they have a need for our services. So for instance, there is software out there that uses all sorts of predictive modeling and data collection across a number of data points to allow Bill and I to analyze whether someone out there in internet world would be a good prospective client to start targeting and getting our messaging in front of them. In your industry, and particularly as it pertains to bankruptcy, are there tools like that you can leverage that might create a profile of a client before you've even met them, and something that says, I better reach out to this person. Their online behaviors are signaling that they might have a need? Or are there strategic partnerships with other human beings that you can leverage to help you get in front of clients potentially before they realize that they need your services?
It's a brilliant question, Allison. I will tell you that there are trigger points for people to be thinking about bankruptcy that I think lawyers have known about for a long time. But the methods and the means by which the lawyers have been exploiting those trigger points have been pretty archaic. I mean, I know lawyers, for example, who would buy lists of people that had a foreclosure or a judgment pending against them and then send postcards to them. Well, that's 19th century. That's not even 20th century anymore. And I do think that the data is available to determine who are our candidates. People that are being sued in collection lawsuits are our candidates, but the machine tools to scrape that data from the circuit court to say who has filed the case and who should be contacted and how they should be contacted, I would say that's still in the exploratory stage. And I would tell you that the typical bankruptcy lawyer doesn't A, have the sophistication, or B, the capital necessary to exploit those effectively. And I think that when marketing services realize that this is something that they can do effectively, that's a better mousetrap that they can sell that works better than, for example, search engine optimization or pay-per-click ads on Google, which is what I would say is the 20th century tool. So, people find me the old-fashioned way. They are referred to me by trusted advisors and friends who know that I will take care of them. And so, I'll continue to take advantage of that reputational advantage that I have. But to your point, I think that the predictive possibilities for characteristics that give rise to bankruptcy, which I know have not yet been as exploited as fully as they might be. It's really a brilliant question, Allison.
Yeah, thank you for that. Another aspect of this that I feel like sometimes gets overlooked, if I'm putting myself in the shoes of someone who is going through a number of financial hardships, whether that's as an individual or a small business owner like I am, I'm thinking to myself, well, I might be at the tipping point where bankruptcy makes the most sense for me. But what I'm most scared of is how my life is immediately going to change, or if my life is immediately going to change. So, could you share with us what that kind of looks like, maybe days 1 through 30 of someone like myself who owns a small business? I've reached a point where I can no longer manage and I have to file for bankruptcy. Going forward, my life looks like XYZ.
Well, it's a good question. The concept of bankruptcy starts with the idea that an honest debtor is entitled to a fresh start. And so an awful lot of the work that I do is rehabilitative. And it's to point out to people what happens after things are all done. Because bankruptcy does provide relief, undoubtedly, The question is, well, what kind of relief do you need? Do you need to have a liquidation, which is something that you don't want if you have things that could be liquidated that you could lose? Or do you want some kind of a reorganization where you can restructure your debt and keep most of what you have and pay your debts over time, which is what many, many small businesses are doing. So a good chunk of what I do is educational, to explain to people what their options are, frequently outside of bankruptcy. For example, we avoided bankruptcy for a lot of businesses recently by calling their attention to the employee retention credit, which allowed them to get a lot of money for the work that they did struggling during COVID to keep their employees. Well, the Internal Revenue Service refunded a huge chunk of payroll taxes to people so as to allow them to stay in business. And that was a big deal. Sometimes we point out that you have tax advantages like net operating loss carry forwards that allow you to continue in your business profitably. Sometimes we suggest to them that subchapter 5 of chapter 11 lets you restructure and reorganize in a very effective way, and in a way that lets you keep assets and settle your debts really on a very favorable terms with your creditors. So I think that the largest thing that we do is educational, to point out to people that A, all hope is not lost. B, what can we do to prevent you from making the same mistakes that got you into this trouble in the first place? C, what can we do to keep you having as many assets as possible? And D, what can we do to satisfy your creditors in the least painful way to you? So that's a lot of what we do. And I think people mistake the idea that bankruptcy is a scarlet letter B on your forehead. It is not. It is basically a very time-tested tool for people to rehabilitate and get a fresh start and move forward. And that's why it's in the Constitution. Our Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 put bankruptcy in the Constitution, right along with immigration. So it's something that we've been thinking about in this country since its inception.
Well, I did not know it was in the Constitution, so thank you for that little educational fun fact there. One of the things that you mentioned a number of times just now was regarding education, and I know it's really important to educate people around that emotional moment so that they're not in the depths of despair late at night looking online and they just, they're Googling away and decide to click on the ad for the first bankruptcy attorney that they find. But with regard to education, I was recently watching the annual Keller Williams Vision speech online. And one of the points they illustrated that was from 1982 to 2022, in terms of rising costs just to exist, the top 3 categories were healthcare, tuition and books, and food. And so for people out there who are struggling to stay afloat, whether it's a small business owner, a large business owner, or an individual person, those 3 things I mentioned are kind of non-negotiable. So how do you counsel your clients who may be pre-bankruptcy or have just filed so that they can continue to engage with these necessary services? I mean, we need healthcare. Unfortunately, our healthcare system is imperfect at best. Higher education still holds a lot of value, and we can't live without food. So how do we manage inflation and how that's impacting our lives without necessarily needing to get to a point where we have to file bankruptcy?
Well, the interesting point, of course, is that as a bankruptcy lawyer, I can't do this all by myself. And one of the things that I think sets me apart from my peers is that I look at things holistically. If you look at my website, you notice that the Lake Law is not just your lawyer; it's your financial lifesaver, and we do think about your life. So to your point, if you are having a problem with food, I can refer you to a nutritionist, for example, to teach you how to go about getting the nutrition that you need at a reasonable price. This is not my expertise, but I have friends in my network that it is their expertise. Another thing that I can do, and I help people with a lot, is resolution of student loans. And I can counsel them about what sort of loans they are toxic loans and what kind of loans are not toxic loans. So I do that. One of the things that I really strongly recommend is the Sesame Street maxim, which is it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And that is pertinent in terms of your education. It is not necessary to go to an Ivy League school or a private school like the one I did, Northwestern, to get a first-class education. You can get a good education at UI or UIC, for example. You can go to a community college to start and get your degree at a four-year college later and save a lot of money. And the degree looks exactly the same when you graduate. And the curriculum is really not much different. You want to go to grad school and get an MBA. It doesn't matter whether you went to undergraduate at the University of Wisconsin or whether you went to some school with a fancy pedigree. And there was an article about this in the New York Times today. I recommend you look at it, about 15, 20 students that talk about their college experience and what they would have done differently and what they learned from that. So take a look at it, because what you need is an education. You don't need a particular brand of education in order to do well. So these are things that I talk to parents and students about alike. After the fact, you can't change things that much, but before the fact, you can counsel people to make wise choices, and that's something I try to do in my practice.
Well said.
Absolutely.
Well said. Any other questions?
What is it that you look for in terms of a financial advisor, of someone that might help people in distress? How do you know when people are in distress when they see you in your business? I mean, do you find people that are stretching too much to buy a house, or stretching too far to get a mortgage, and say, you know what, you can't do this, maybe you need some help before we get yourselves organized? Does that happen in your fields?
Bill probably gets a peek into that more than I do, because by the time I'm working with a client, we're operating under the assumption that they've spoken with a lender, they have a pre-approval letter in hand, and they're very clear on how much they need to borrow, how much they can borrow, how much they need to have for a down payment, what to expect they have to come out of pocket at the closing table, what their monthly budget truly is, and what elements make up that monthly budget in terms of housing costs. So,
on the sell side, though, you must run into people that have to sell because they lost a job, or because they had an unexpected transfer, or some other issues like that. Doesn't that happen sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of times it's kind of interesting. Perspective is, each individual's perspective is their own reality. So a lot of times you find that people believe that their situation is actually much more dire than it really is, or much more time sensitive than it really is. So I think that's where there are times where Bill probably has to do this as well, where we sort of have to put on like our therapist hat and talk people down off a ledge a little bit, because your home is likely your biggest asset, and it's not something we want to gamble with, and that's not something that we're going to treat lightly in terms of the transaction of buying or selling a home. So it is important to pull back the curtain and understand what's going on in someone's life that is driving these decisions.
Do you help people with short sales from time to time?
I don't have a lot of experience in that arena right now, and it's not because I'm opposed to it. It just hasn't become really a big part of my business, and maybe that's not the type of client avatar that I'm kind of resonating with right now. I feel like I'm trying to spend a lot of time just offering education, not only for potential first-time home buyers, but first-time home owners, just to be a good homeowner and take care of your asset and connect them with the resources that they need. And then hopefully when it comes time to buy and sell again, they think of Bill and I, because we've served them well throughout the entire process, not just in that like 3% slice of time when they're buying and selling, but actually, taking care of them as a homeowner and helping them build their confidence as a homeowner.
I should think that both of your businesses are like mine in that you really do need to have a network of professionals that surround you that can support your clients in ways that you can't, because then that enhances your skill set too. Who are the people in your fields that you talk to and use to enhance your services to clients?
I'll let Bill take that one first.
Sure. So much like what Allison touched on, when life's stressors may require the start of a conversation of someone who has to liquidate assets to sell a real estate property, I certainly reach out to Allison to ask, is this an opportunity you're interested in engaging and starting a conversation? On the buy side, you're absolutely right. Given what I do, my first and primary goal is to communicate to the buyer if they're sourcing financing, of course. What is their maximum purchasing power? What is their maximum borrowing capacity? And then sharing that information to Allison so that she knows what parameters she has to work within for the benefit of the client. I think outside of that, the relationship that I've developed with you, David, it becomes important because there are certain instances where I know just what I know from a very limited perspective about starting the next chapter, starting fresh. And the better thing for me to do is to simply pick up the phone and say, David, are you available to start a conversation with someone I want to introduce to you? I would say Allison probably has a very large Rolodex of other business partners that she relies on it for.
Yeah, I think in terms of, like I had mentioned, being a resource to clients before, during, and after the transaction, one statistic that's kind of interesting and a little bit sad is that it's somewhere in the ballpark of only 13% of people ever use the same realtor twice. And I think a big part of that is that we become very complacent in terms of our follow-up and how we continue to engage with our clients. And it's nice to receive the postcards at the holidays, and it's nice to receive the little anniversary gifts and all of that. But how are you making yourself an indispensable resource to these people in their lives? So for me, it's twofold. Altruistically, my goal to help my clients have a better experience is to, as quickly as possible, get them off the internet and connected to a real person for whatever service they need, whether that's services of a lender, an attorney, a title person, a financial advisor, to actually connect them with someone who I have personally vetted and know and trust and would refer a family member to. That's goal number one. So they're not stuck in the Google verse and going down all these different wormholes. And then from a more, I guess, self-serving or business-minded perspective, even right now, I'm building out this list of what I call my VIP vendors. And there's probably 20 different categories, and the categories will continue to grow. But if I want to establish myself as a local expert and an invaluable resource to my clients, it has to be everything from, oh, you mentioned you're looking for a dog walker. I know a fantastic dog walker. Oh, your youngest child is about to start daycare. Let me point you towards this daycare where my kids had a fabulous experience. So it really runs the gamut. And for me, it's just a matter of being present when that need arises and connecting people with a solution. But they can take heart in knowing that I am not sending you to anyone or any place who I haven't personally vetted out and, spoken with their references and know that they're going to show my clients the same level of service that I would.
I really appreciate what you just said, Allison, because I think that what you do is what we all aspire to do, which is to be a key person that's trusted in the lives of our clients. And that I think that the point is that we have to treat our clients as though they are our friends, even though we must maintain a professional I wouldn't say distance, but dispassionate approach to them. So you want to be passionate with your clients, but also dispassionate at the same time. And that, I think, is a thing that really distinguishes the real professional from the amateurs. So, we really do want to care about our clients passionately, but we also need to be aware of what their needs are and be there to help them. If we do that without regard to what we might be getting from them in the future, they will be there for us over and over again, because they'll think about us when it's time for them to refer somebody to us. And so that's the whole
Yeah.
point. I mean, no, I tell people that all the time, you don't need me, but you know someone that does. And that's probably the case. You don't need me. You don't need me, but in due course, you will all run into someone that needs me. And so I'm really not marketing to you, but if I can demonstrate to you that I'm worthy of your consideration, and I do that by caring about you, then we have a chance, don't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. I mean, it's really just about making sure that when that emotional moment, that mini crisis arises, people know who they can call and who they can turn to without having to lean on a stranger just because, again, they're doom scrolling at 11 o'clock at night and don't know where to go for help.
Let me relate a story to you. Maybe 25 years ago, I ran into a young woman at the Standard Club, which is out of business now, but we were both using the business center there. And I was maybe 10 or 12 years out of law school. She was just barely starting her career. But she was clearly on her way. She was starting her own practice, and she was very ambitious. And we talked for a good half an hour. And this woman, I'll just mention her first name, Dahlia, and I became friends. And over the years, I would see Dahlia from time to time, and her practice grew, and my practice grew, this and that, and we would send things to each other once in a while. Well, just last month, she sent a client to me that had a big problem in a bankruptcy court in Delaware. And she didn't hesitate. She sent it to me, even though she was mourning the death of her father, for God's sakes. She sent me that client. And I solved that client's problem in about 48 hours, actually, and let her know there was nothing to worry about. But my point is that the relationship started 20, 25 years ago, just simply by curiosity and care. And treating people with respect. Now, I mean, I don't know you yet, Allison, but I will. And Bill will tell you I didn't know him yet, but I do now.
Sure.
It's a matter of just treating people like you believe that they matter, because they do. And if you treat people like they matter and you give them that respect, they're going to give it back to you in large measure. I'm confident about that. And it pays dividends over many, many years. 25 years later, Dahlia is still sending me business. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and it's one of the sales gurus who I've followed for many years, and I always take these little like catchphrases of his and really try to internalize them, is you have to be indifferent to the outcome and just fall in love with the activity. And I know that's not maybe an original concept, but it's something that over the last couple of years especially has become more ingrained in me. And my results are so much better when I'm not focused on the transaction and I'm just in the moment, in love with the activity, serving, not selling. It's really amazing how the universe will start to return good fortune to you when you're just kind of putting it out there, helping people when and where they need help.
Well, when you're squeezing the toothpaste tube, it doesn't necessarily come out the top. If you squeeze it hard enough, the tube is going to burst and it'll just flow out from all directions. And so I think the key is to keep squeezing the toothpaste tube, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes. As we wrap up today's episode of Leave It to the Experts, David, thank you for sharing your time with us. And a big shout out to your friend Dahlia, whoever she may be. If she's watching this episode, feel free to throw down your emoji, your comment, so that David knows that the relationship that he has built with you, he has built with many others, certainly stands the test of time. So, David, Allison, thank you for sharing your words of wisdom, your time with our audience members today. And that is a wrap.
Thanks a million.